A fruit that is indigenous to North America is akin to a counterfeit in comparison to the blueberry. It thrives in the untamed, extending from the Great Lakes to the Carolinas. It has 4 times the antioxidant content of blueberries. In 2020, the USDA ranked it as the most potent of 276 music foods. In order to endure frost, drought, and parasites, it generates its own medication. And when we consume it, that medication music becomes ours. However, it is probable that you are not acquainted with it. Or, if you have encountered it, you are familiar with a name that is intended to make you dislike the music. The chokeberry was branded by the settlers after they sampled it once, puckered their lips, and savored it. They concluded that it was pointless due to its lack of sweetness. They removed it from the land in order to cultivate music crops that had a sugary flavor. In the process, they eliminated the most potent antioxidant factory in the temperate globe. The following is the narrative of the berry that we declined due to its musical intensity. Welcome to the Lost Vault of Nature. The archive opens in the woodlands of eastern North America, thousands of years prior to the arrival of the first Europeans. With the sound of music, this berry was not a source of choking for the Potawatomi. It was sukin. Music was an essential component of the Abnaki's winter survival. The Lakota considered it to be the secret ingredient in pemmican, a high-energy survival food composed of dried flesh and fat. The flesh was preserved for years by the natural preservatives of the berries. The indigenous music peoples did not evaluate cuisine based on its sweetness. They evaluated it based on its actions. They were aware that this dark purple-black fruit was a potent form of music medication. The Cherokee used its bark to alleviate fevers by brewing it. The berries were employed by the Potawatomi to alleviate colds that had become deeply rooted in the thorax. They comprehended intuitively what modern science would only be able to prove over the course of centuries. The bitterness is not a defect. The crux of the matter is the resentment. This is Aronia. The black Aronia is scientifically referred to as Aronia melanocarpa. The Aronia bushes that were flourishing in the hedgerows were disregarded by the settlers as they proceeded westward in the 19th century. They desired bread for flavor, as well as apples, pears, and peaches that were imported from Europe. Aronia's music was marginalized. However, an additional individual was observing from across the ocean. Ivan Maturin, a Russian botanist, acquired this American berry in 1897. Sugar was of no concern to him. Survival was of paramount importance to him. He was employed in the harsh climate of the Altai Mountains, where the cold caused the demise of delicate European fruits. It was evident to him that Aronia was particularly resilient. He observed that it flourished in the presence of destruction. He initiated the process of breeding it by crossing it with mountain ash in order to produce crops that were both more robust and larger. Aronia miturini was established by him. The Soviet Union transformed Aronia into a strategic music crop, while the United States was preoccupied with the development of soda and confectionery bars. It was recognized as an official fruit species of the Soviet Union by 1946. By the millions, they sowed it. For cosmonauts, music, and soldiers, they produced juice, wine, and extracts. They identified it as an adaptogen, a substance that enables the human body to withstand the duress of music. Currently, Poland cultivates 60,000 acres, which accounts for 80% of the global commercial Aronia production. In contrast, it was regarded as a landscaping shrub and a decorative element in its native North America. The United States did not commence commercial cultivation until 1997. Music. We were 100 years behind in the development of our own superfood. Therefore, why did we disregard it? We were deceived by a fabrication. The deception that heath is synonymous with delicious in the sugary sense. We have been conditioned to anticipate that fruit will have a flavor similar to candy. For decades, strawberries, pears, and even contemporary blueberries have been cultivated to be more palatable, larger, and watery. They forfeited their medication during the procedure. Phytochemicals, which are bitter, astringent, or sour, are often used to combat cancer, reduce inflammation, and safeguard the heart. Music polyphenols, tannins, and anthocyanins. These comprise the plant's immune system. The shield of the plant is tasted when the arid, puckering sensation of aronia is encountered. The OAC scale, which measures the oxygen radical absorbance capacity of foods, was employed by USDA scientists to evaluate 276 foods in 2020. It quantifies the extent to which a substance can neutralize free radicals, which are the molecules that contribute to the development of disease and aging. Blueberries, the media beloved of music, achieved a score of 4,600. The tally of aronia was 16,000 points. Perform the calculations. That is nearly 4 times the capacity. 30 aronia berries provide a greater level of protection than a substantial quantity of blueberries from a supermarket. Additionally, the specific compounds are significant. Aronia is abundant in proanthocyanins, a compound that is present in red wine and is known to promote cardiac health. However, the concentration of aronia is 10 times that of grapes. A trial with diabetics was conducted by the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences in 2008. Fasting blood glucose levels decreased by 17% after consuming aronia liquid for 90 days. Music. In 2017, the University of Illinois discovered that it decreased insulin music surges. This berry is not merely a source of nourishment. It functions as a metabolic regulator. Complex diets are not well received by the agricultural sector. It favors commodities that are straightforward. Massive subsidies for blueberry cultivation were implemented by the USDA in 1948. They allocated funds to breeding, research, and marketing. For what reason? Blueberries are straightforward. You may consume them by the fistful. They correspond to the pleasant profile. They established a supply chain that was specifically designed to transport watery, sweet blue spheres across the globe. Aronia does not conform to that paradigm. It is not sufficient to consume a small quantity of fresh aronia berries. Your mouth will become parched as a result of the tannins. Aronia requires a relationship. Processing is required. It desires to be prepared into a sauce, blended into a smoothie, fermented into wine, or dried for tea. It necessitates a culture that prioritizes preparation over immediate gratification. Industrial agriculture is opposed to any measure that reduces consumption. Consequently, they abandoned it. They denied that it was a commodity. Blueberry producers are granted price supports and crop insurance, while aronia farmers are left to their own devices. Despite the fact that over 50% of blueberries are sold through large retail chains, 34% of aronia sales are conducted in person at music farmers markets. This maintains its diminutive size. This ensures that it remains a specialization. However, the erasure is not limited to economics. Music. It addresses the issue of biopiracy. Aronia, like the wild rice of the Ojibwe, is susceptible to larceny. In 2022, biotech companies endeavored to patent hybrid aronia varieties by utilizing genetics extracted from the untamed without the consent of the indigenous population. They intend to eliminate its savagery. They intend to patent the sweetness, breed out the bitterness, and resell it to us as a new superfood. However, resistance is increasing, and it is emanating from those who have never forgotten. The Meskwaki Nation in Iowa initiated a food sovereignty initiative in 2012. They are reclaiming aronia as a relative, rather than as a commodity. In an effort to mend a community that had been devastated by the legacy of residential schools and diabetes, they founded Red Earth Gardens, which specializes in the cultivation of traditional foods. They are instructing their children that medicine does not always have a syrupy taste. And then there is the commercial revival, which is not being headed by corporations, but by families. The Pitts family in western Iowa examined their heavy, damp soil in 1997. It was of no use to maize. It would result in the death of soybeans. Aronia was the sole plant that desired to be present. Consequently, it was established. They refrained from attempting to modify the land to accommodate the crop. The crop was modified to accommodate the land. They initiated the initial commercial Aronia farm in the United States. Currently, the Midwest is home to hundreds of cultivators. The governor of Iowa declared September to be Aronia Berry Month, not due to lobbyists, but rather due to a grassroots movement. This revival demonstrates a significant point. We are weary of the sustenance that deceives us. We are bored with fruit that is engineered to have a long expiration life and a high sugar content, but it leaves us deficient in nutrients. We are prepared for the bitterness. Aronia violates the regulations of contemporary cuisine. It is an evergreen. It yields for a period of 20 years after being planted. It necessitates no nitrogen fertilizer. It is indigenous to North America, which is why it has virtually no natural predators. It is appropriate for this location. Although blueberry producers are employing fungicides and pumping groundwater to maintain the health of their bushes in climates that they do not prefer, Aronia is flourishing in the roadside ditch, unnoticed. Each shrub yields 20 pounds of fruit. This amounts to 30 glasses of medication provided annually at no cost. Contrast this with the inputs necessary for a field of maize or a grove of almonds. Aronia is a strategy for transitioning from industrial dependence. The narrative of Aronia is the narrative of our own palate. We were instructed to be apprehensive of the strangulation. We were instructed to be apprehensive of the strong, the acrid, and the dry. However, the dryness in your mouth is a result of the tannin binding to the proteins in your mouth. The bitterness is the antioxidant that is eradicating the inflammation in your bloodstream. You are in communication with the organism. It is informing you that it is capable of providing the support you require to endure. We nearly lost this berry, not because it became extinct, but because we neglected to appreciate its flavor. We allowed the Russians to place a higher value on our own heritage than we did. We were persuaded by the USDA that only sweet items in music are valuable. However, the bushes are still present in the wetlands, the forest margins, the backyards of Iowa, and the gardens of the Misaki. It is their hope that we will mature enough to recognize that genuine sustenance presents a challenge to us. We are safeguarded by genuine sustenance. Sometimes the most wonderful things in existence, such as music cells, do not taste like candy. They perceive music as earthy. This information is not irretrievable. It is currently in the process of maturing. If this vault piqued your interest in music, please subscribe to Nature Lost Vault and press the bell. Each like and share contributes to the preservation of this knowledge. The subsequent vault is scheduled to open in the near future.